I'm talking about 13 essential tools for every model railroader on Ron's Trains and Things right now. Hi, I'm Ron of Ron's Trains and Things, and if you'd like to see more model railroad tips, tools, and techniques, then be sure and subscribe below and click that little bell icon so you can catch future videos. I grew up in a blue-collar setting, surrounded by mechanics, construction workers, carpenters, and the like, and one thing that taught me from a very early age was a fascination with and a love for tools. Well, model railroading is one of those hobbies that just requires some basic tools if you're going to be involved at all. And if you're going to get deeply involved, it can involve a lot of specialized tools. Now, I have read a number of articles and seen a number of videos where different people talk about the essential tools for model railroading. And every time I read one of those, I always think, well, you know, the tools that you're required to have depend on what you're doing in model railroading. There's a basic tool set that I think every model railroader needs to have, but there are also some tools that are definitely required if you're building bench work, and some different tools that are required when you're laying track, different tools that are needed whenever you're building structure kits or doing any scratch building, different tools that are required if you are upgrading locomotives or rolling stock. Now, many of the tools for these different aspects of the hobby can overlap, but many of these different aspects of the hobby require some certain tools for themselves. So rather than do one video on the essential tools for model railroading, I'm actually going to do a series of videos. Today, I'm going to talk about the essentials of the basic model railroader's toolbox. Those basic tools that, if you're just beginning in the hobby, these are the things that you need to purchase first and make sure that you have on hand. Then later, I'm going to do a video on tools for bench work building, tools for track work and electrical work, tools that are needed for structure building and kit bashing and scratch building, and tools that are required for upgrading your locomotives and rolling stock. In each of those videos, I'm going to talk about the tools that are essential to those particular elements. I'm also going to share with you some tools that, while perhaps not essential for that element of the hobby, are very, very helpful and frankly are just really cool. But today we're going to talk about that basic toolbox, and I'm going to share with you what I believe are the 13 essential tools that no model railroader can live without. You've got to have them in your toolbox. If you don't have them, you need to get a hold of them. So let's go over to the workbench now and I'll share those with you. As I share with you these 13 essential tools for every model railroader, there are some things I'm not going to include. Just know I'm not going to include things like a pencil. I think that kind of goes without saying. You're going to need to be able to mark things. I'm not going to include adhesives because I consider those to be more materials than really tools. But I'm going to talk to you about the tools that are just absolutely essential to have if you're going to be involved in model railroading or any kind of model building. These aren't in any particular order, but I will say that the first is obviously the most basic and the most important, and that, of course, is a good hobby knife. You need to have a good hobby knife, whatever one that fits your hand. You know, there's a number 1 handle and a number 2 handle when it comes to hobby knife handles. They take different size bases to the blades. You need to make sure of what you have. Find one that's comfortable to your hand, that fits you well, because you're going to use this a lot. Probably use this tool more than anything else. Along with that hobby knife, you need to have blades, and on a most basic level, that means you need to have lots and lots of number 11 blades on hand. You're going to always want a sharp blade with a nice sharp point for almost everything that you do. And so I literally buy them in boxes like this of 100 blades. And you can see in here, this is a brand new box, so it's full. 100 number 11 blades in there. And those will last me a while. Other blades you can get as you need them, as they are useful to you. I don't use a lot of other blades, but the one other blade that I do use, and that is a number 17 blade, is a favorite of mine. That is a chisel tipped blade that will fit in the hobby knife. These are really, really handy when it comes to, if you're doing a modification, scraping off details from a model that you're modifying, especially like if you're going to replace grab irons, molded on grab irons and put on the wire grab irons. This is great for that. I keep some dull ones of these around for whenever I am casting rocks. And when I go to blend rocks together with plaster, I can use a number 11 blade to chip at that plaster to make it, carve it to look like rock. So I keep those two kinds of blades on hand. Don't need a lot of number 17 blades. I keep a few of them and lots of number 11 blades. In fact, I actually keep two hobby knives on hand. I usually keep one with a very sharp blade in it for making my nice cuts, and the other one with a blade that maybe isn't quite as sharp, a little more dull for if I need to do any scraping or anything like that. So the most basic, most important tool is a good hobby knife. A pair of tweezers. It's very, very important. Anytime you're doing some model building, you're going to work with some small parts, some detail parts. When you're gluing parts together, you don't want to get your fingers in there and get glue on them, things like that. So for handling small parts, a pair of tweezers is a must. You're going to need a scale ruler. Now this is a steel scale ruler that I have, and this is actually multiple scales. This has got N and Z scales on this side, and it has HO and O scales on the other side. If you're doing any kind of building of structures, whether it's kits or you're kit bashing or scratch building, you're going to need to know scale sizes of things. This is a 6-inch scale ruler, which for me an N scale works pretty well. I also have a longer one that happens to be flexible. This is a 12-inch that just has N scale on it. But you're going to want a good scale ruler. Along the same line, but differently, you're going to want some straight edges. And I mean, I prefer steel straight edges. Now here I have a square. You're definitely going to need a square. If you're only going to buy one straight edge to begin with, I would say buy a square first, because you can use it as a straight edge and a square. I also have this steel ruler that came from Staples that I use as a cutting straight edge. I don't like to cut along the edge of my scale ruler. I use it for measuring and for marking things, but sometimes as you're cutting, the hobby knife blade, as it runs along that scale ruler, can begin to mar the edge of your straight edge over time. I don't want to mar the edge of my scale ruler, so I always cut usually with a less expensive steel ruler like this one here. I picked this up for just a couple of dollars somewhere at a Staples store. So some straight edges. Get a square first though, because you're definitely going to need to have something that you can use to make square marks with, and also check the square of the corners of models that you're building. You're going to need some precision drill bits and a pin vise. This is a set that I bought when I first started. I'm still using it. I have a couple of them that have broken over the years, but if you're careful with these, they can last you a very long time. You're going to need these tiny drill bits, these very small drill bits for drilling holes that you'll be putting pins in to glue things together, or holes for screws, holes for mounting things like, couplers or trucks onto your rolling stock. All kinds of things you're going to need some drill bits for, and you're going to need a pin vise to use those drill bits. I also have this. I don't know if you'd call this a pin vise. It actually is a drill. This is very, very handy if you can find one of these. Literally, it's got this spiral piece in the middle, and if you hold this part that turns here, you can push down on this, and it actually does the drilling for you. It's very, very handy. So if you can find one of these, they're a nice tool to have for doing your drilling. You're going to need an NMRA gauge. This is a gauge that will help you to know the gauge of your track, the gauge of your wheel sets, the height of couplers, flangeway and point clearances, all kinds of things that you need to check and make sure that they're accurate on your track work and on your rolling stock and locomotives. It's some people, whenever they're first starting the hobby, they just assume, hey, if I'm buying stuff that's ready to roll, all those gauges, they're going to be okay. That's not always the case, and so you need to be able to check the standards on all of those things, and so for that, an NMRA gauge is absolutely essential. You're going to need some cutters. This is a pair of side cutters I've had a long time. Honestly, as you go forward, you're probably going to want several pairs of these. you're going to want to use different pairs for different things. Now, this is a pair that I use for cutting general metal. I use this for cutting wire when I'm doing electrical work and other just general cutting. I also have a separate pair that I use just for cutting rail, that are specifically rail nippers. I have another pair that is specifically for cutting etched metal parts out of the carrier sheets. And I have yet another pair that I use just for cutting plastic parts out of sprues. You don't want to use the ones you cut for metal to use on those fine plastic pieces, because these will get marred and dulled from cutting the metal. I don't know if you can see it, but these are pretty beat up on the edge from cutting wire and stuff. So, start with a pair, and start with a good pair. Over time, you're going to want to pick up probably some others. Along a similar line, also some needle nose pliers are very, very handy for holding work, various kinds of work. Also for being able to grab and pull and hold things that you need to hold tightly. I actually have a couple of pair. This one has a serrated jaw for when I'm needing to hold and grip something really, really tight. But I also know that serrated jaw can cause some damage, so I don't want to do that to everything. I also have this pair, which has a smooth jaw on the inside, and so those can be handy for different uses, but also very, 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 very handy to have. I guess I would call this a tool. I'm going to include it anyway, and that is some sandpaper. Now, you can use general sheets of sandpaper that you can buy at the hardware store. You can also use sanding sticks. I have a whole set of these sanding sticks of various grits. You can also use sandpaper to make your own sanding sticks, just by cutting a stick and gluing regular sandpaper really flat onto it and then trimming it along the edges. You're going to want some various grits. I have several right here. This is 180 grit, which if you're sanding wood, that's kind of a medium grit, but if you're working on fine models, that's pretty coarse. This is a 220, which is a little finer. And then this here is a piece of 600 grit, which is getting down really, really smooth. I try to keep on hand up to at least 1200 grit, 12 or 1500 grit for super smooth and fine work. But you're going to need a way to do some sanding, so you're going to need some sandpaper or some sanding sticks. Along a similar line, you're also going to want a set of needle files. These are for removing material that's maybe a little more intense work than what you want to do with sandpaper. For example, if you're cutting doors or windows out of a scratch build model and you need to really smooth those down, you make some rough cuts, but you may have a 1/16 of an inch you need to take off. Needle files are great for that, for smoothing things down. You can get one set that comes with a whole bunch of different sizes and shapes of needle files, and you'll find that over time you'll use them all. It's also highly recommended that if you do work with both plastic and metal, that you actually get two different sets of files. You may get one set and kind of divide them in half, and then buy some individual files to kind of fill in the blank spots there. But ultimately, when you're filing metal with a file, you're going to end up with some metal shavings in the grooves, and you don't want that whenever you're going to do some fine work on plastic. So it's a really good idea to have separate sets of files that you use for metal and for plastic, but you definitely are going to want a set of needle files on hand. The next thing is paint brushes. Now, I've got just a variety of here. These are just some that I kind of randomly picked out of my paintbrush holder. Paintbrushes, you're going to find over time you're going to use a lot of them. You're going to use them for different things, and you're going to ruin some over time. What I would suggest, if you don't have some fine paintbrushes, I would suggest going to a Hobby Lobby, maybe even a Walmart, and buying a set of paintbrushes first, a set of artist's brushes. Several of these, like these, came out of a set, and these here came out of a separate set. Buy a set of paintbrushes. I would suggest at first buying a set that has bristles that are some kind of a synthetic, because they will serve your general purpose work pretty well at first. As you get further into the hobby, you're going to find that you're going to want different shapes, and you're going to find that you want different materials, different types of bristles. So natural bristles work better for some things. The synthetic bristles work better for others. You're going to use brushes for a variety of different things, and you're going to find that you're going to want to keep them separate and use them specifically for those things. Some brushes, like these couple of brushes I have right here, they're very short and stiff bristled. These are great for applying weathering powders, pigments to models, and because that stiff brush, I can really get in there and work it in. And so I use those specifically for that purpose. Others I use specifically for spreading ballast on track, and then of course a lot I use specifically for different kinds of painting. And you can see here I have, a chiseled brush, which is great for a large one like this for applying paint along, close edges on a larger surface. Brushes like this I use for dragging streaks and things when I'm doing weathering on rolling stock. Of course, I have some very, very fine brushes. This right here is an 18-aught brush, working in an N scale. Sometimes you have to do some very fine detail work. You're going to find over time you're going to collect a lot of brushes. You're going to go through some brushes, but get you a good set of artist paint brushes, and they will serve you very well. A couple of things that you may have right on hand in your house. A tool that I'm never without on my workbench is toothpicks. Now, this is just a few. I've got a whole box of toothpicks up here. These are great, first of all, for positioning small parts and moving things around in a very small way, but they're also very, very handy as applicators for adhesives. And so you want to keep some of those on hand. You'll find them very useful. Something very similar that we'll talk about probably in another video more extensively, and that is bamboo shish kebab skewers. They can be handy both at the workbench and at the layout. And then one last tool that you're definitely going to want to have on hand, and that is some clamps. Now, there are a lot of different kind of clamps out there, and you can get little simple spring clamps like this. You can buy these at a hardware store very inexpensively, and they do a pretty good job. The quick grip clamps like these are also very handy because they have a wide range of how wide you can open them and what you can grip, and also you can set the pressure yourself exactly where you want it. If you want more pressure or less pressure, you can set that yourself, and then a quick release. Of course, I'm sure you've probably seen quick grip clamps like these. This is a tiny one. I have some larger ones also, where you can grip something of a larger size. And again, you can work it in and set just the amount of pressure that you want. You can also make some homemade clamps that are very, very handy using just simple clothespins. Now, a clothespin itself can serve as a clamp. The problem with a clothespin, the way it comes, is these beveled edges often make it to where it's hard to get this exactly where you want it. But you can take a clothespin like this apart and turn the pieces around the other way, or turn them end for end, and you can make a clamp like this, where you see the bevel is on top now, and I've got a very specific point of contact here at the end. I also like to turn them backwards so that the handle end is now the clamp end, and if you squeeze this, you find out that you actually have a lot more leverage, and this will hold things a lot tighter. Those make great clamps. I do the exact same thing with the little decorative clothespins that you can get at, I think you can get these at Walmart. I know you can get them at like Hobby Lobby, Michael's, places like that. And you can turn them around in the exact same way and make some very small clamps that you can put in small places that will work very, very well. And I love to use these. I always keep a large number of those around, in addition to the clamps that I have purchased over time. So there you have it. Those are what I consider to be the 13 basic essential tools that every model railroader needs to have. Now, again, I hope you'll be watching in the weeks to come, as I'm going to be sharing with you some more tools videos about specific tools for some different aspects of the hobby. I think you'll find those interesting, and I also look forward to sharing with you, again, some cool and fun tools that maybe aren't essential, but you might find are very interesting and very useful in different aspects of model railroading. Now, the tools that I've talked about today are available at your local hobby shops, at hardware stores, and of course through many online suppliers. Now, you can find links to many of these tools on my Amazon page, and there's a link to that Amazon page at the top of the description down below. If you click on that, you'll find links to many of these exact tools right there on that page, and you can order them from there. Now, if you enjoyed this video, here's a link to some more videos about model railroading tools that I think you'll enjoy as well, so be sure and check those out. Now, before I close today, I want to remind you that ordering is open right now for a limited time for Ron's Trains and Things t-shirts and coffee mugs. If you're interested in a t-shirt or a coffee mug, they cost $18 each, but that includes free shipping within the 48 contiguous states. Now, if you're outside the 48 contiguous states, you can order a t-shirt, and I will adjust the shipping to reflect the actual shipping to where you live. I cannot ship the coffee mugs outside of the 48 contiguous states, simply because it is just cost prohibitive to be able to ship a single coffee mug and get it there safely. Now, if you're interested in purchasing a t-shirt or a coffee mug, send an email to ronstrainsandthings@gmail.com. The link to that email will be down in the description below. In that email, be sure and tell me what it is you're wanting to purchase, and if you're purchasing a t-shirt, be sure and tell me your t-shirt size. They're sized small, medium, large, extra large, and 2XL. Also, be sure and include your shipping address so I know where to send them. Now, the only form of payment that I'm able to take is PayPal. So if you're going to order a t-shirt or a coffee mug, you need to be able to pay through PayPal. Don't pay immediately. Send me the email, and I will send you a PayPal invoice, and you can pay through that. Now, I will only be taking orders through Sunday, April 22nd. That's about another 10 days. So be sure and get your orders in soon. Now, I will open up ordering for t-shirts again probably in the fall, so if you don't get one ordered now, there will be other opportunities. Unfortunately, because of the supplier that I'm using, I can't offer them on just a continual, ongoing basis, but I'll open up orders for them periodically as I have the opportunity. Now, this Friday, I'm going to be bringing you a bonus video, which will be a review of a really cool tool that you might not normally think of as being a model railroading tool, but it can have great applications for model railroading as well as a number of other household projects. Now, this is a sponsored review. A company contacted me, asked if I would be willing to review their product if they provided one for me, and it was something I was very interested in, so I was glad to do that. So be sure and watch this Friday for that bonus video, that tool review coming out, and of course next Tuesday I'll be bringing you another model railroading segment. I hope you'll join me then, and I look forward to seeing you then. Lizzie?